Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give a brief explanation, if you would. Okay. Thank you. House Bill 1437 contains the proposed general fund budget for 2013-2014. House Bill 1437 is a proposal that represents budget priorities in the House of Representatives that members of both sides of this aisle have advocated for their constituents. Believe me, I am not presenting House Bill 1437 as the final budget because negotiations between the House, the Senate, and the Governor are ongoing on a number of significant policy issues. This plan does, however, represent a starting point for the budget negotiations and outlines the budget priorities that are important to many Republicans and Democrat members in the House, and does so without raising taxes. I'll take a few minutes now to highlight some of the House priorities in this proposal. On the education line, the House reaffirms its commitment to K-12 education by proposing a $100 million increase for basic education funding and provides school districts with additional $160 million for school employee pension contributions. The proposal also invests in early childhood education by adding $6 million for Head Start and pre-K counts programs. House Bill 1437 increases funding for library access program by $500,000. The proposal includes $3 million for grants to career and technical schools to purchase new equipment so the Commonwealth can expand career and technical education opportunities. I also like to note the funding for mobile science centers is restored, an increase of $50 million for a total of, $50,000 for an increase of $700,000. Overall, there's a proposal to increase education by $274 million, which brings the total state appropriation for basic education to $10 billion, which represents the most state tax dollars ever spent for basic education. Looking at an entire budget in each department, there are many other important priorities throughout this proposed budget. In the Governor's executive offices, there's an 11% increase for the Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and also an increase for violence prevention programs. The Attorney General's office is recommended to receive a 1.5 increase to expand public safety programs like local drug task force and child predator interception units. In the Department of Aging, the proposed budget recommends the Governor's proposal of an additional $50 million for senior services. In the Auditor General's line item, in an effort to ensure government accountability and efficient use of tax dollars, the proposal recommends an additional $2.6 million for the Auditor General's office. In the Agricultural Department, $4 million to restore funding for ag research, hardwoods research, ag education and promotion, food marketing and research, Pennsylvania preferred programs, and other departmental programs. In the Agricultural Department, we restored $1 million for the county conservation districts. This proposal recommends that state fairs and the State Farm Show Fund both receive $3 million. The budget also recommends that funding for the Vet Lab and the Animal Health Commission are moved to the Racehorse Development Fund, which will actually provide a net increase to all ag programs. To better serve the taxpayers of Pennsylvania and ensure that they have access to state government records, the budget proposes an 18.7 increase for the Office of Open Records. I know everybody on this Appropriations Committee heard the testimony given, and we felt that due to the sheer volume of work that office is doing, we increased that line item. In DCNR, $2 million is added for heritage parks so that we can continue to lead community conservation and revitalization efforts. In the Corrections Department, there are new funds for the Justice Reinvestment Fund to help further reduce corrections spending and generate savings. Under drug and alcohol, a 1.5% increase is included in the new Department of Drug and Alcohol programs. In DEP, the proposal provides approximately a 4% increase to DEP for both environmental program management as well as environmental protection operations. For the Department of Health, $7.2 million is added to restore funding for health and disease-related line items. Many of you have contacted my office as well as Chairman Markozic's office to increase the diabetes programs, funding for epilepsy, ALS support services, Tourette syndrome support, biotechnology research, poison control centers, and lupus. Insurance Department, there's a $9.5 million increase to the CHIP appropriation to help ensure all children who are eligible for CHIP are enrolled in the health insurance program. In the Labor and Industry Department, $250,000 for a new pilot program that has state workforce investment boards implement a program that targets veterans to help them with education and job placement, so our veterans have a job when they come home from serving our country. I know many members were also interested in the New Choices, New Options program. We restored that at $500,000. In the Military and Veterans Affairs Department, there's a 43% increase in funds for the Veterans Outreach Service appropriation under the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. And thanks to increased federal funds for Pennsylvania veterans' homes, we can actually serve even more Pennsylvania veterans in our veterans' homes. The Department of Public Welfare, a total of $10.9 billion is being spent in that department. DPW's budget reorganizes medical assistance dollars to move to statewide managed care to achieve a better health outcome and be more cost-effective. The department budget also contains an additional $20 million to further reduce the waiting list for the individuals with intellectual disabilities. This is one of Governor Corbett's top priorities, and this is in this budget. This proposal also recommends an additional 10% for the domestic violence and rape crisis programs. In all, DPW will receive a total of $10.9 billion. Our state police, to ensure public safety, there's an additional $12.7 million for an additional 300 state troopers. Our proposal calls for a 3% increase for the State Fire Commissioner's Office, and an 8.7% increase is provided for the probation and parole to ensure better supervision of the offenders. All Pennsylvania courts are recommended to receive an additional $4.6 million, or an increase of 1.5% increase. The legislature will also receive a 1.5% increase. In summary, the total spending of $28.3 billion is a $578 million increase over last year, or a 2.1% increase. For those that are wondering whether this falls within Tabor, Tabor is a 2.4, so this is under Tabor. The House leadership has made it a priority to make sure that we pass budgets on time. In order to stay on pace to meet the June 30th deadline, the House needs to move a piece of legislation. On the balance sheet issues, as many of you know, the Governor proposed a budget in February. And on May 1st, the Independent Fiscal Office published a report that suggested that there would be a $520 million revenue shortfall for the year 2013-14. In the House, we went to great lengths to provide funds for House priorities, maintain current funding levels, and recommend a responsible and sustainable spending level. To develop this budget, the following steps were taken to balance less revenues with the spending plan proposed in House Bill 1437. Due to the better-than-expected revenue collections in May, the House proposal increases the current revenue estimated collections to $28.6 billion, $87.4 million over the official estimate, and anticipates a 1.4% growth in the fiscal year 2013-14, which over the fiscal year 2012-13 and the fiscal year 2013-14 provides a $305.6 million less than the Governor's budget. The House proposal also uses $175 million from tax refunds as well as prior year lapses. Finally, the House also proposes to spend $100 million less than the governor's proposal, which largely is a result of some IT changes.